Good morning. It is July the 3rd of 2023. Today's the day before.
Today's the day of your wedding anniversary.
It is, but
Second, third,
no, it's the fourth one actually.
fourth one?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's the day before July 4th, which we know fondly as Independence Day. So we're all Americans here. What do you love about America?
The eagle.
Speaking of bald, people have been coming up to us and asking and saying that Adeline, my daughter, has a widow's peak because of me, but I don't have a widow's peak. I just want to put that out there. I'm just balding. That's all it is. Speaking of bald, what's your favorite thing about America?
You want me to respond for you?
Yeah, is it the melting pot?
No, my favorite thing about America is that it is the greatest nation in the world.
Dang. Do you think if we pitted America
In all of history.
in all of history against like the Roman Empire, against Genghis, against Alexander the Great, we would be number one.
Yes.
Technology aside.
What? No. Yes. Everything.
Dang. Wow. You don't think we would lose to the Han Dynasty?
No.
This morning, we are talking about what is a man again? And this title can be read in a couple different ways. What is a man again? And what is a man again? It's because we had an episode called What is a Man? But today we'll be reviewing and discussing some questions that we've had. A lot of people have brought up after our WWE bam from this past Wednesday. We'll be reviewing some of those questions this morning. This is a long intro, but I also think that we need a funky beat, maybe the John Cena beat.
Yeah, maybe we could incorporate that
crazy.
into the Dear Church podcast.
You are listening to the Dear Church podcast. Welcome to the Dear Church podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. My name is Sam Yang.
My name is Chunsuck.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, yeah,
What?
I don't know.
I think I've been just saying my name.
Recently,
the past couple of weeks.
yeah, it's been really
I can't
great.
think of anything.
It's
on
been
the
really
spot.
It's
helpful.
got to be quick. It's got to get boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom. You know what I mean? My name is Adeline.
Yeah, and we have with us Pastor Eugene. Pastor Eugene, what's a man again? We're going to be talking about what is a man this morning. So today, again, is a review of the WWE. And if you are in the area, as they say, of Northern Jersey, we have this every Wednesday, Worship Wednesday and education, every Wednesday at our church. So you could join us at 7 p.m. for the parenting class or 8 p.m. for the worship. But, Pastor Eugene, you talked about what a man is. And I think this is a very important topic for today, especially with everything that's happening and going on in our culture. And you brought up 3 points in your teaching. A man is to provide, a man is to protect or keep, and a man is to profess. And I wanted to just kind of maybe go into that a little bit in depth and bring up some of the questions as well. In provide, I guess, could you just kind of briefly just tell us what did you mean by provide?
Provision, production is all part of, God's order. When just a quick review of Wednesday, and just so you all know, is we've had actually some people ask for the Wednesday night lecture, and so
Yeah.
I think we're working on a way to stream it. And so if you still want this one, please just email us again at podcast@cgsnj.org. And then Junzug is actually working on a link that you get, anyone who's ever listening can just click on and listen to that link. But if not, we'll do a quick review here too. So
Yeah.
that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But the quick answer, the short answer, and I do like the longer answer that was given on Wednesday, was we're going through Genesis chapter 2, and there are 3 verbs that God uses when he after he creates Adam, after he puts him in the garden. It says work, keep, and then he commands, right?
Yeah.
And so he commands the man. So those three verbs are referring to what a man should do. And so that's where we get, provide, protect, and profess. And it's not just any kind of provision. It's not just any kind of protection. It's not just any kind of profession. It is what God has originally designed us for. So when we do, you can technically be someone that does, provide, protect, and profess, but you could be providing and protecting and professing the wrong things.
Right.
We want to do it, the right way or the way God has ordained. And so I went a little bit into that. And so provision is about, how God has ordered things and how God has made this world or this creation to produce fruit. And just as God also worked and produced, man is to mimic that and to, mirror what God has done. In that, imitation, we glorify him. So provision is one of them.
I think a lot of the questions that have come up in this section have to do with the way that a man provides today in the 21st century. And the biggest way that a man provides in the 21st century is by working and bringing home the bacon, as they say, right? The salary, the money, to provide, whatever it is, clothes, food, shelter, whatever may need to be provided is provided through the income that the man can bring in. I think, and so some of the questions that have come in are questions kind of like, and these are kind of extremes, right? And I really enjoyed when you said this before too, but in the talk you said the extremes prove the rule.
Exceptions.
The exceptions prove the rule.
Right.
They're exceptions because the rule exists or the norm exists, right?
Yes.
So in this scenario, I mean, what if the woman makes more than the man? That's a question I think that a lot of people have been asking. And interestingly enough, this is a question that was asked in my seminary as well. Is it wrong for the woman to make more than the man? Does the man always need to make more? Should we be looking for husbands that make more or wives that make less? Like, how should we be looking at this?
Yeah, I think there were a lot of follow-up questions. So if you do attend WWE, one of the things that I enjoy a lot is when we break out for discussion, people can just ask questions and then, people go around trying to respond to it, right? So I really like that last part. So in the beginning, if you don't know our WWE, we do have a parenting seminar, and then we have a light dinner, and then we have the teaching, what we're going over right now. But afterwards, we have a little breakout session for discussion. I really enjoy that part personally because I like the questions that people ask. And so we wanted to review some of those questions here. But before I go and answer that question, I also wanted to go back to where these three things come from, because, the question could be, are you saying that a woman shouldn't provide, protect, and profess?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that. Absolutely, they should. But it's in a different dimension for a man. And those dimensions are, qualified, and they are kind of given. Those boundaries are given in the Word of God. And it all stems from this one idea, which I mentioned, which is duty, D-U-T-Y.
D-U-T-Y.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we also need to remember is with duty, there's a correlation to honor. And up until yesterday, a man, a lot of his identity and worth came from his weight or honor that he possessed, right? So if you said a man was honorable, it was correlated with his righteousness. It was correlated with his strength. It was correlated with all these things, but it all does come from his connection and his ability to fulfill his duty, right?
Right.
And those are the three things that we saw in Genesis chapter 2, provide, protect, profess. And so I guess that's the initial part.
Okay.
Yeah. What was the question?
The question is, as we apply the provide portion of it, and today obviously that's going to be it's going to be connected with money. What if the woman can provide better than a man? What if a woman makes more than a man? Is that okay? Or
yeah, I think I mentioned this, but it's only in recent times where this has even been an issue, modern times, right? Where a woman could possibly bring home more cash or income than a man. It was never possible before, or very unlikely or rare instances, like again, exceptions, like even in the Roman Empire, a woman could possess land if she was a widow. You know what I mean? And so widows had pull in the Roman Empire, and to a certain degree. But then they also were, taken advantage of brutally by many cultures within the Roman Empire. So
Yeah.
there's all this, dynamic in play in different kinds of cultures and as history progressed. And so this is a recent phenomena, but I don't want to just say provide, protect, and profess is only on the physical level. The physical level is there. It's very important, but also is connected with the spiritual level. And so just remember that the man's provision isn't only physical. If it's only physical, then your family will have issues, because the family does desire something even more than the physical. There's, the emotional, the presence, even if it's physical, do you want presence? And, there's definitely the spiritual aspect that we have gone over in our podcasts. You know what's interesting? I saw this one video, I think I gave it to you, was there was this little girl who was being interviewed, and she was being interviewed by someone that was not her mom, but she was asking a question. So to this little girl, you have two moms. Would you want a dad? And the little girl immediately goes, yes. And then now this person, the adult that was interviewing her, and you could tell this person is obviously not a conservative woman by the way she dressed and the way she carried herself. She's like, well, why? Is it because, well, why? And then little girl goes, oh, guys are strong, and it's not that my moms aren't strong. They're strong too. And then the interview would interject saying, oh yeah, I bet in many ways they're so much stronger than even a lot of men. What about, is it just because you want someone to carry you on their shoulders, or push them over your head, or that kind of throw you over the head.
Yeah.
And what if your moms could do that? Would you still want a dad? And the little girl immediately goes, yes. And you could see, even though this woman was just trying to ask questions, she wanted to point this kid to a way where she would, for her, come to this realization that she didn't need a dad.
Right.
The little girl always just said, yes, I want a dad, I want a dad, I want a dad. Even though the little girl couldn't articulate it, the immediate answer is, yes, I want a dad. And, it's one of those things where men have a role to play. And especially in the household, in the family, men have a role to play. And this provision, it looks different than the woman. And so I get it that women now can make more money than a man. We could go over why that is. We could go over, and this is what I plan on going over on Wednesday on the feminist waves, the movements. We're up to like 3.5 or 4 now.
Yeah.
But, as we do that, what does it look like for a man to provide? And what is it really pointing to in terms of duty? And that's what I really wanted to get at. And all these exception cases, of course, once again, I say always comes back to proving the rule. Similarly to your question, someone did ask, there's a young man, and in my discussion group, there was a young man who just said, he has a bunch of friends who were even thinking out loud and talking about, Jansuki, you were there, right? In that group, about his friends saying, what if I wouldn't mind if the woman did all the work, brought home all the money, and I just stayed home. And, I pointed out a bunch of points. It's like, well, here are the points of concern with that kind of thinking. And so, because people might be like, what's wrong with that,
Right. And I think that's one of the questions that I want to ask too, because, we know that a man is supposed to provide, but if you're providing for the purpose of your family's well-being, couldn't the woman just do that as well? And if she provides enough, you could just be a stay-at-home dad. Why does it matter? Because there's stay-at-home moms, and that's okay. Why not a stay-at-home dad?
Yeah, there are definitely exceptional cases, like during the Depression. If the man couldn't find work and the mom could find work as like
Yeah.
a tailor or something,
Mm.
she would do the work and dad would stay home and watch the kids. There are definitely exceptions that have been out there in history. And the season now, like I guess the era that we're in now, can be seen as some sort of exception because we are diverting from what was commonplace and traditional in a very, very fast pace, right? And so I guess one of the things that I mentioned a bunch of things, but one of the things I mentioned is you can think that, but we still go back to what is the core of a man, because women look for it even though they can't articulate it. And this might sound controversial, but even the most liberal women, when they do these podcasts, they'll say the same thing. You'll ask them a simple question to this regard, to your question. Would you want to marry a man that makes less than you? 100% of all the women said no. No. It's like, why not? Isn't it an egalitarian society? It's like,
Yeah.
no. Why does the man have to make more than me then? So again, there are instances and exceptions, perhaps when the economy is, in a depression, or you're in a place where you are out of a job for a while for whatever reason, those roles can be flipped physically for a time, for maybe even a longer time. Maybe it is indefinite if it's like a physical handicap or injury, a permanent injury. But why is it that these young women who are liberal and who are very, very leftist in their thinking still don't want to marry a man who makes less than them? Because this is what I believe, in their core understanding of a partner, when they're looking for a man, is that this person must be capable, this person must be honorable, this person must be able to fulfill their duty as a man, okay? And while they won't articulate it in that sense, it still plays out where they won't marry. So the ridiculous thing about what I pointed out about the person who asked about his friends is that you can think that, but there is no woman out there who's going to make, $250,000, $500,000 a year, who's going to be like, let me really look for a guy who makes $50,000. There's no woman out there. Why is that the case? As liberal as they come, why is that the case? And to me, that's a fascinating cultural just development, that we still keep to these very basic rules. It points back to natural laws and how, as much as we want to subvert them, some of the very basic stuff is still in there. And so what if the woman makes more than a man? So what if? So what? Does that mean the man should not provide? And I think the answer to that, for me, is a resounding no. The man still needs to fulfill his duty to provide. And so, people have asked questions like, well, should he still work as hard as he can, even if he makes less, and blah, blah, blah. That's great. We can go by case. But I think what I really wanted to do was go to the general principle. And that is, providing is an essential part of manhood.
So what you're saying is, even if the wife makes more, the man still working and bringing home a paycheck is still honorable, and that he is providing.
No, I think the man working,
Uh-huh.
will naturally produce.
Uh-huh.
The fruit is part of the blessings that God has ordained. But working the ground is their pre-lapse. It's pre-lapsarian to know that men should work. And so men need to work, and work provides fruit. And so that provision is a promise of God. It's part of your duty, and it's a part of something that you reap. And so women providing is something that is extraneous to what I'm trying to get at.
Mhm.
It's a great thing that a woman can provide, I suppose. But woman providing in that sense wouldn't define who a woman is.
Mhm.
No one would think that. No, let's reverse the roles. No man is going to be like, well, I don't want to marry a woman that makes less than me. Men don't think like that.
Yeah.
Men find gratification, satisfaction, for the most part. There are always exceptions again.
Yeah.
for the most part, when they're able to provide for their wives and their families, it brings them satisfaction because it feels like you fulfilled your duty. If it feels like you fulfilled a purpose, one of the purposes that you were created for. And I think this is one of the primary ones. And to deny that, to be like, well, I don't really want to think like that. You have to always ask, why not? Why not if it's core and fundamental to the creation of man, meaning ish, right? In the Hebrew, if it's core and foundational there in Genesis chapter 2, why isn't it to you? What about, you makes you special and exceptional that you don't find satisfaction and gratification in being able to provide for your family, spiritually and physically, okay?
So let me ask kind of a couple follow-up questions. So if a man is made to work, and that's one of the rules that he has, right? Let's just say, couldn't someone argue and say, well, if the woman makes enough for you to be able to survive off of one income and someone needs to watch the kids, why not the dad just watch the kids? Why does he have to work just for this sense of satisfaction? Isn't that selfish?
Yeah, it could be. I know many families that had the roles reversed because of whatever reason, like those exception cases.
Yeah.
But again, I would talk to these people. I know it's anecdotal, but I would talk to the fruit of these families, like their children.
Mm-hmm.
And I would ask them simple questions like, didn't you think that you had to work that much harder because those roles were reversed? And didn't you have to like extend yourself even more? Think like, oh, I need to exercise even harder because this is not normative. This is an exceptional case. And exceptional cases means that you have to make up something like a handicap. Let's say you start off with minus 15, you're going to have to work that much harder. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so those are things that kids naturally feel. There's no doubt that they really appreciate their dads. I think every kid that I talked to, or the product of that kind of family talked to, they really did appreciate their fathers for making that sacrifice and staying home. They just couldn't do it. But at the same time, they did still, and those kids actually turn out, for the most part, more conservative than you think. And so they really believe in the normative family functions and roles. Yeah. And so they really believe that. Why is that the case? When they were so successful themselves, they don't think that's a model that is that should be replicated. And so why is that the case? And I get that's anecdotal, but it goes back to the model that's shown to us in the Bible. And so there are exceptions where we know that we need grace, but it should point us back to what's normative. It should point us back to what is natural, meaning what God has shown us in nature. What is the order?
What if someone were to respond, and this is in response to the interview that you shared with a little girl that immediately said that she wanted a dad, and also the women that were interviewed that said that they would marry, or they would want to marry somebody that made more than them. What if people could respond and say, well, that's just how they were brainwashed. That was just culture talking. This little girl grew up watching movies of a mom and a dad, but we're more progressive now. That's what she's looking back towards.
No, absolutely. I completely agree with you that a lot of people think this way.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that it's because they saw this and they have this mimetic desire to copy what they see as, what's is right now, at least the majority. Mm-hmm. They want that for themselves as well. They want
to be normal.
Right. And I couldn't disagree more, because what that kind of thinking leads to is they, in the end, want to upturn and upend all of societal norms as we know it now. Uh-huh. They want to reverse that so that the normative thing is LGBTQ+. They want to make that normative. Say, because we see straight families, that's why we want to call them cisgender, right? So we put a derogative prefix in front of what was normal, like cis normal. That doesn't make any sense, right? So I don't even know why we say straight. We're just normal.
Yeah.
And then we didn't want to call people normal. It's like, are you gay? It's like, no, I'm just normal. It's like, that sounds weird because you're saying that I'm not normal. Well, you're not. We didn't become a society that we are through gay people procreating, because that's impossible. Right? You know what I mean? And so, we're going to call them straight. There's gay and the straight. Oh, well, that's also offensive. What are we, crooked then? We don't want to call non-gay people straight. So now we'll call them like cis or whatever it is, heteronormative, that kind of thing. And we must destroy the heteronormativity in our world. And remember that Satanist Target designer had one of those on his t-shirts. Yeah. Anyway. And so we want to upturn everything. This is what I mentioned about the Harvard Journal article that was out there. They want to destroy democracy. They want to destroy the family. BLM's major points was that they want to make everything into like this village where moms would lead, things like that. They want to upend the patriarchy, whatever they're defining that to be too. But then they want to upend whatever made us come to the place we are. They want to upend it. And they start by saying, we're in a terrible, terrible place. We're not in a place of success. It's all racism. It's all like, these bourgeois people that have, brainwashed us, mind controlled us. That's why we're in this place. And so, yeah, I absolutely think that's what they really believe. They really believe that we need to upturn every single family and make it, like an LGBTQ family, and that they would satisfy them. But I'll tell you again, 100%, even if 100% of the society was not straight LGBTQ, people would still long for what is right. People would long for it because we were made and we were created. There's something inside us, and then we are searing our consciences on purpose, like. To convince ourselves that this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. Yeah. But like, you couldn't convince the little girl as much as the parents are trying to brainwash her. You know what I mean? And that lady who wasn't a parent tried to brainwash her. You couldn't convince her. She just wanted a dad. I just want a dad. I just want a dad. That's normative because that's natural. It's one of those things that by the grace of God, the common grace is still there. And when he pulls that away, that's when we see Romans 1 happening to even greater degrees when he says, he lets us be what we want to be. It brings me to a point that I really want to make. It's a philosophical point, and I hope I can interject that real quick here. People think that the opposite of order is chaos, and I don't think so. The opposite of order is nothing. In the beginning, there was nothing. It's ex nihilo. God created order out of nothing. So chaos isn't the opposite of order. LGBTQ isn't the opposite of straight. It's nothing. That's why Sodom and Gomorrah was reduced to rubble and ashes, because God let Sodom and Gomorrah go all the way through of what happens when chaos is done. Chaos is the process to nothing, okay? In the beginning wasn't chaos. In the beginning was nothing. And I think people don't get that. In the beginning was nihilo, nada, zilch. And then out of this nada, God created order. God is the creator. And when God creates, order comes naturally. And so when people are thinking, even Christians can mistake this, they think that our fight is against, this opposite of order, which is chaos. No, it's not. Actually, the opposite is nothing. So when God gave them up to their desires, God is giving them up to nothingness. It's a decreation. And then this decreation goes to eternal punishment. And so, I hope that people also get that. The chaos is a process down to annihilation, which is what we get, we got annihilation from nihilo. Yeah.
I guess just staying on this topic of provision, another question that people can ask is, at what point do you trust in the Lord's provision? And what I mean by that is, for example, a lot of older pastors had salaries that would be barely enough to keep their families afloat. At what point do you trust in God's provision that he will provide what is needed for the man to provide versus finding a new job or finding another job?
Especially when this person is a pastor or just anybody?
I guess just anybody. I mean, the reason why I brought up pastor is because that's just the first thought that came to mind. You know, in generations past, pastors could barely make enough. And what I heard very often is, oh, but God provides, but God provides.
Yeah. I mean, one of the requirements to be an elder is to be able to manage your family well. How can you manage your family if you can't provide for them?
Yeah.
If they're not eating or clothed or sheltered, you're not managing your family well. So
Right.
that would take you out of the running to be an elder. And to aspire to be an elder is a great thing. However, you need to be able to manage your family well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get it. In the past generations, we have heard of stories, and maybe we even know of some people who actually made their family suffer in the sense where they would take what should have been their provision and, let's say, gave it to the church, right?
Right.
So I remember reading a story in the 90s how a pastor's family starved to death, like literally starved to death, because he was giving everything to the church, and the church didn't even know, but they weren't eating until their oldest son just died of malnutrition. And then, I guess things flipped around then. It's a very, very sad story. Yeah, providing for your family is a very basic foundational aspect of being a man. If you're not doing that, then you can't do these other things. Even if you are called to be a pastor, your call or vocation does not trump the fact that you have a foundational call that God has given all of men, right? And so if you can't provide for your family, start doing it.
Yeah.
You have the ability. It's a promise of God to be able to work and to see the fruit. And I get it. There are different levels of wisdom that people have. Some people, when they work, they can make $1 million. Some people, when they work, they can make $50, whatever it is. But whatever you have, God is giving you that ability to provide for your family. And so work as hard as you can and rely on the Lord to bless you. Because ultimately, any blessing, where it's $1 million or $50, is a blessing from the Lord. So do it in gratitude. Do it in reverence for the Lord and how He has created you, and work your butt off. Work your tail off when it comes to your career or your job. So my issue is with the young men of society who don't want to work. So I get it that there can be some exceptional cases where people are saying that they rely on the Lord's provision. They're really working hard at something else that's not providing for their family. That's not what you do. You provide for your family. Even Paul alludes to that in 1 Corinthians. Like, if you're married, you have other loyalties. When he says, it's better to stay single in 1 Corinthians 7. But it's true. You have other loyalties, meaning you have to provide for your family. It's one of the basic things that even Paul understood when talking about the next level thing, which was about serving the Lord with that kind of veracity and intensity. Okay?
Yeah.
And so there are pastors who are bivocational. There are pastors who rely on the living wage that the church provides for them, or the income salary, whatever you want to call it. But I would say, to your question, if you cannot provide for your family, find a way.
Yeah.
Find a way. You have to. Pray harder. Ask God for wisdom. He's the one that says in James 1:5, ask the Lord who gives freely. He wants to give you wisdom. And so pray that you get wisdom so that you can provide for your family. Don't just sit on your butt. Don't be a sluggard. Every single Proverbs talking about the sluggard is because they're sitting on their butt and they think, oh, there's a lion out on the street. I can't go out. That's what a lazy man says, meaning, oh man, I don't want to take the risk. I might die out there. It's like, yeah, take the risk. Go out there and work, because that's how you, and again, like you said, bring home the bacon.
Speaking of bacon, I wanted to move on to protect or keeping or guarding. This is the word shamar, right?
Well, I don't understand the correlation. Can you explain that? Bacon and...
Isn't there a game called Protect the Bacon?
There is.
Or is that Steal the Bacon?
There's
Steal the
that too.
bacon.
Steal the bacon.
Steal the bacon.
So, au contraire to bacon. Protect. You talked about how a man is to protect. That is part of his duty. I understand that in Genesis, this may have been more prevalent, where, the man had to protect his family from against physical attacks, but it doesn't happen as much today. I mean, to be quite honest, it does right now, as of late, but not as much as perhaps back in the day. So what does this look like, protecting your family? Does this mean that all men should be armed and know how to fire a weapon? Does this mean that all men should know self-defense? How do we understand protecting in today's context?
Yeah, I gave a quick example from Ephesians, a bunch of Bible verses in the talk, but in Ephesians 5:28, I think alludes to what you're asking.
Ephesians 5:28 reads, "In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself."
You sacrifice your own body to protect your wife and your family.
Mm-hmm.
I think, that's one of those things that are just out there. It's ridiculous to think that if a gunman came into my house, I would throw my wife in front of me to protect the family. That doesn't make any sense. And so people in our egalitarian society are very confused now. They're like, why can't a woman go out and take the bullet? No, I would always say, are you serious?
Yeah.
Is that the kind of family that you want?
Yeah.
Where the mother dies and then the father gets to live? Is that the society that you want? So when we have a war, we send our women out to protect us men. Again, if you don't fulfill your duty, then your purpose as a man is detracted from, is taken away from. You don't feel good about sending women out there. This is such basic stuff that even men are afraid to talk about. And I'm actually pretty tired of it. I think men should talk about it. It's out there. It's overtly out there in the Word of God, and it's there in society playing itself out in the natural order of things up until yesterday. Now, yesterday it's all called, from yesterday, now we all call it toxic masculinity. But that's false. Anyway, I don't know if you're going to get into that, but I would love to get into that one day about what is toxic masculinity. But for our purposes today, to protect is to protect with your body. It is to protect with all that you have, meaning, your body is all that you have. You protect with everything that you have. You protect your family spiritually and physically. And those are things that we see when we see keep. You're supposed to keep the garden. So that protection is already there. That you're learning from the world as you are farming or gardening, right? That act of protection is something that a man grows up learning. It's very basic, long time ago, maybe not now, but if your sister was getting bullied and you're the brother, it will be a natural thing for you to go protect your sister or even your younger brothers or just whatever it is, right? And so it will be a to thing for even a younger brother protect their older sister from bullies. And so this is what we have seen. Again, I'm not saying that the roles cannot be reversed, but I'm saying overtly we see this. Like for the majority of instances, we see this taking place where the man does protect the woman. And so I hope that makes sense. I know it's a shorter answer, but I hope that one made sense.
So should we all have guns?
I don't think so. I think if you're in a gunfight, you should bring a gun. You don't bring a sword to a gunfight.
I mean, if it was announced prior that it was a gunfight, then you should.
If it was announced prior that you're going to have a duel with guns, then bring a gun. Don't bring a sword.
Oh, yeah.
Or throwing knives. Shurikens.
I think just to kind of
Yeah.
add on to what the previous question was asking about women going out to work and men staying at the home. I think even with that, with this idea of protect, I think one thing Pastor Eugene mentioned during our discussion group is during times of war, you would never send the woman out to go and fight in the war.
Right.
The man would go out and the man would protect his family, his country. So I think even within how we are designed, like in the fabric of society with times of war and times of peace, the things that we're asking are very focused on our current time of peace, but in times of war, all these things change.
Yeah.
And I think when lives are at stake, things really do kind of play out how God has designed things to be.
So there's a negative term for a mom or a dad that doesn't let their children go out or doesn't let them do things that perhaps other children do. And it's, this mom or this dad is overprotective, or these children grew up sheltered. as a Christian, as a father, knowing that you are to protect your kids, how do we view this? Is this a call for us to be overprotective, or is that even a bad thing?
No, I think those are totally different terms and subjects. Overprotectiveness is not correct protecting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you want to use your wisdom and discernment to protect. So when we say overprotect, you're not actually protecting them in the right sense.
Right.
And so again, I say these terms because we need wisdom with these terms. You need honesty with the terms. We need like all these other qualities and characteristics need to come support these terms, but these terms are primary, and then the support verbs come afterwards. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when you say overprotective, I'm saying that that's not protecting them at all. Actually, you're endangering them.
Mm.
And so you can say even like, the old Spartan culture where they would throw their boys out into the wild so they would survive.
Yeah.
And you know what they would say? If a Spartan ever lost, again, only men went out. Okay. I don't know why this has to be said. This is crazy.
Yeah.
But if a Spartan army lost whatever battle and the survivors came back home, all the women in that city would raise up their skirts and dresses as they came back home, saying, "Go back in the womb." That's what they signified as they would lift up their skirts. And so to protect doesn't mean to just shield. To protect means to keep.
Yeah.
Yeah. To guard. And to guard also can mean to strengthen. It can mean to shield at times. But it does mean a lot more than just to, keep away. Does that make sense too?
Yeah.
So if you're overprotective, you're not really being protective at all. You're actually endangering the child more in the future.
So I'm assuming that in order to protect somebody, you'd have to be strong. And you mentioned this in your talk, in your teaching, that a man is to be strong and mighty. And I kind of want to get into that. What does it mean to be mighty? Like David's mighty men. What does it mean that they were mighty? But how strong is strong enough?
Yeah. Physical prowess is definitely one of the qualities that men aspire to have. Just like righteousness should be. You should desire to be strong. And it plays out differently. And the example I gave on Wednesday was that in our church, and this is anecdotal obviously, but in our church, we love playing flag football. And each person has a different display of strength there. Some people are quick, some people are agile, some people are strong, some people are dense. Some people could power through, some people could stand like a wall, right? Mm-hmm. And they play different parts on the football field, but they're all strength correlated. I believe you had mentioned, Sam, that you were sad that I didn't mention you getting the most sacks or something.
Well, no, it wasn't that.
Yeah,
we don't need to go into the details
let's say it in the podcast so everybody can give you the recognition that you deserve.
I mean, it's true, but we don't have to talk
Sam
about it.
Sam had a record number of quarterback sacks, right?
Yeah, I mean, just all types of. I mean, I guess there's only
one kind of, yeah. And so he holds that record very proudly.
It'll never be broken because we don't play football anymore.
So what did you have one season, like 30 something?
No, I think it was like 20 something.
20 something, which is still a lot,
I mean,
considering the number of games we play.
And I was the only one that counted, probably. So
yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But then those are things that we remember because strength and feats of strength is something that we enjoy, we like. Feats of any kind of exceptional physical prowess is something that men in particular enjoy. Can I give a really weird side example?
Yes.
About the cornbread?
Yes.
Yes. So there's this one Instagram video. It's a reel about this dude holding out the note cornbread as long as he can.
Yeah.
And in the background, there's like a bunch of harmony. There's like some dude that does harmony, like 3-part harmony.
Yeah.
Because he can hold it out for so long. And then it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But, I can hold it out for longer.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so impressive. I showed my wife, I did it in front of her, and she wasn't as impressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be real. But then when I did it to you, you were pretty impressed.
I was very impressed. Yeah.
Yeah, so
It's
it's
very cool.
different what impresses guys and girls, apparently.
Yeah.
But yeah, physical progress really, I think guys really get into that. I'm not saying women don't, but I think guys really do because that's something that they aspire to be. And so it is part of the protection, like you said. And these are little things that we see that are not absolute. They're not like definitive points of protection, but they allude to this very basic foundational point of protection. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that you have to sing low or you have to get, an amazing statistic in a football field. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we have a part to play and we want to excel in those parts. And strength is a big part that helps us excel in those parts because it points to our foundational, aspect of being a man.
I think something that's a little sad is, we're talking about these three different aspects of manhood, their duty, which is provide, protect, and profess. I think oftentimes a sad truth is that men over focus on one. So there might be a dad that just works and doesn't do anything else. It says, I'll hire somebody to protect and profess. Whereas there's some dads that might just focus on protecting their physical body and there's no other development anywhere else. I'll just take you to Sunday school to be taught and all this other stuff, and mom can provide. And so it is interesting that I think a lot of guys fall into this camp where they can over focus or concentrate on one aspect of these things. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there could be a myriad of reasons why.
Yeah.
Yeah, but any kind of, overextension or extreme points to an imbalance.
But moving on to profess, you talked about how men are to teach, especially their families, teach what we believe. And this automatically means that we must know what we believe in. And I think the question is, how can we better profess? As Christian men, how can we better teach our families? How can we, do that better? And I think Junseok brought up a really interesting statistic yesterday when we were talking about this. This is in the book, Disciplines of a Godly Man by Dr. Kent Hughes. And he talked about how I think it was something crazy like 70% of Christian books what was it stat?
Consumed by women.
Consumed by women, yeah.
Yeah, 70% of Christian material is consumed by women, right? So obviously there's a very big disparity between the amount of Christian material that's consumed by women versus by men. And so it's already against us there. So how do we better profess?
Yeah, I think perhaps for a lot of men, they don't want to read for whatever reason. As teachers, you have to read, though. If you're a teacher, you have to read. There's no if, ands, or buts about it. There's no way around it. You have to read. I think for maybe the lay man, YouTube and podcasts are a big source of their, the knowledge that they get.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think those mediums are out there still. Men used to tell stories to each other. Like, remember, like a long time ago, like grandpas used to sit. You have this picture of grandpa sitting by the fireplace, and then all the grandkids would come and say, "Tell us a story." Papa, tell us a story.
Papa.
And so, those are the things that, pappy, right? They would call grandpas pappy. Right. And so, those are things that we saw in the past, almost like now it's in a romantical sense where we remember that. But I do believe that a man should be someone that learns. You need to learn correctly and you need to be able to profess it correctly because you can't profess what you don't know. And so what actually was the primary part of the fall? It was the man not teaching correctly because we know that Eve said the wrong command to Satan when Satan said, "Did God really say you cannot eat of any of the fruit of the garden?" Then she gave what was not fully correct back to Satan. And guess what? Adam was with her. It says when she ate of the fruit, she gave it to her husband who was with her. And so Adam was with her and he still didn't correct her. So one of two things, he didn't remember the commandment correctly or he didn't teach it correctly or both, right? I suppose it could be both. They're not mutually exclusive. So those are things that, we see what was primary of the three that you have to do is you have to know. You have to know the Word of God. As a man, you have to know the Word of God. It's integral to your family that you know the Word of God and that you are able to teach it and profess it correctly. So if you're a man listening to this, know that this is one of the most primary things that you ought to do. Know what is righteous. Know the law of God. Know the Word of God. Love it. Fear the Word of God. Fear God, and then be able to disseminate it to your wife and to your children.
In college, I've heard of a lot of my college friends that were girls say, I want to meet a man that can lead me. I want a man to lead me. That was like the leading characteristic that was desirable, the most desirable, a man to lead. What does it mean for a man to lead, especially spiritually, in the Christian family?
I heard there was this one show. Is it from The Office? It's like, I want you to lead me, but don't tell me what to do.
I think that is from The Office, yeah.
I think that was hilarious. I want you to lead me, but don't tell me what to do, What does it mean for a man to lead is to take on this mantle of duty. And as you continue to be responsible, again, this is only 3. There are tons of other things that a man has to do. But those are the 3 basic foundational things that we saw in Genesis chapter 2. And that Adam basically abdicated. He forgoo.
Yeah, forgooed. Yeah.
Forwent.
Yeah.
Oh, forwent. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. He did not do those things. But, it led to many, 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 many other things. Like he didn't take responsibility. He blamed God for what initially he thought was the gift. He's like, oh, this is flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone. He was so thankful. And then when the tables turned, he's like, this woman that you gave me. Not a gift anymore. And so there are so many things that did happen that we can learn from Genesis 1, 2, and 3. But I just went over 3 basic ones. And so I hope that you don't think it's an exhaustive list, but they are foundational to being a man. So when we're saying, how does a man lead? Learn from the Word of God, brother. There are all these things that you ought to do. It's not just one thing. It's not just 2 things. But if you start with these 3 things, I think it's a good start, in my opinion. Understand that God gives us duty. And ultimately, it points to Jesus Christ fulfilling his duty to us. He did all these 3 things absolutely and perfectly as a man on this earth as well. And so please continue to learn from our Lord Jesus Christ. And so I think that's something I could say. How do you lead? Learn from Christ, because Christ is the head of the man. The man is the head of the woman. So learn from Christ and how he leads you. And so those are wonderful things that we can learn from the Word of God.
So speaking of leading, and this is more of a general question, someone might come up to you and say, well, men leading is great, but there are plenty of societies where it is women led, a matriarchy.
Yeah, all the third world countries.
So I think that's a correlation. So how do we think about these societies that are women led?
Yeah, I think there's a reason why they're all poor, and they're considered third world because they're, again, natural order. That's how God created. God created the world to be a patriarchy. So when people say patriarchy, they mean like in a domineering way.
It's like an aggressive term now.
Yeah, but that's not what we mean. Obviously, we mean biblical patriarchy, where God has called the man to lead, and it's always qualified by love. Husbands, love your wives. When we read 1 Corinthians 16, it is act like men and do this in love in the very verse after, right? And so love qualifies all these actions. So if you profess, if you protect, if you provide, and it's not done in love, you're not doing it correctly. So when Jesus does those things or did those things and is continuing to do those things, he is doing it in love. And so I hope people also remember that. Again, the Wednesday, the seminar really, or the lecture really went over all these things a little bit more in depth than we're going over now, because we want it to be a review. But yeah, definitely we want to do it in love.
So I guess this is the final question of this section. And if you have any other questions, you could always email us at podcast@cgsnj.org. But I guess finally, last but not least, how can we better pray for the men in our lives?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I have been really encouraged by in our church is especially the woman coming up to me saying that I am praying for you and I appreciate the sacrifices that you're making for this church. Granted, it obviously hasn't been easy, but that has been a huge encouragement to me. I hope that these women will also pray for their husbands too. Pray that they will succeed, that when they, protect, provide, and profess, they will do it where it will bear much fruit in their lives and their families. There is no way that the head will do well and the body will not benefit. That doesn't make any sense. Unless the head is severed from the body, then it's dead anyway. And so the head doing well always benefits. Like if the head eats like nice food, what benefits? The whole body benefits is the point. And so why wouldn't you feed it good food? So please continue to pray for your man, meaning your husband. Continue to pray for your elders. Continue to pray for men in that sense, I would say. If you're a man, continue to pray that you'll be, I think the number one thing I always tell people is to be teachable. It's when you're stubborn, when you're prideful, that you can't do things in love. And that's the opposite, to be honest, of love, is to be proud. And so you don't want to do that. And so continue to pray that you will remain teachable, humble, like our Lord Jesus Christ. And even though the world will say, humility is not a masculine trait, absolutely not. It is a masculine trait. Maybe one of the primary traits that we ought to remember that our Lord Jesus Christ possessed, because he's the one that condescended. He's the one that gave himself up for us. And so even trying to understand what Jesus Christ did, you can't get away from the fact that he was humble. So please pray for our men of our society, that they will take up the mantle and be men.
Mental. We're going to do a quick Q&A. Thank you for that, Pastor Gene. Little Q&A.
We need a beat.
What you got in the bag? What you got in the bag?
What you got in the bag?
In today's question and answer, we have a question on the tree of life. See, this is what I was waiting for. I love this because I've been wondering things about the tree of life. But the question reads, Eve and Adam ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Did they not eat from the tree of life in the midst of the garden? And why not? Because only the tree of knowledge of good and evil was forbidden. So why would they not have eaten from the tree of life? So why didn't they start with that if it was not forbidden? Because part of them being kicked out of the garden was there was an angel guarding the tree of life in case that they reach out and eat it and live forever. Right? So did they never eat of it? Why didn't they eat of it?
Yeah. Let's read it. Genesis chapter 2, verse 9.
Genesis chapter 2, verse 9 reads, And out of the ground the Lord made to spring up every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. The tree of life was in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah, both trees were in the garden at the same time.
Right.
So to assume that they didn't eat the tree, the fruit from the tree of the life is false. Okay. So it was there, and it was available to them. I don't see why they wouldn't have eaten it. Okay. When we talk about Genesis, especially as Reformed Christians, we're talking about what was actual and also what it symbolized. So there are two dimensions that we should understand. So there was an actual tree of life there, but it also symbolized something. It meant that Adam and Eve had to continually eat of the tree of life. When they were barred access, they no longer had access to the tree of life. Therefore, death came upon them as well. So it's part of this punishment and curse that they received, that they no longer had access to the tree of life. So when we talk about the real tree of life, what it also pointed to, it points to Jesus Christ, who is the never-ending fountain of life, who continually gives us life, meaning we must continue to commune with Jesus Christ, and that is guaranteed to us as he is the high priest who lives forever in the order of Melchizedek, as we went over in Hebrews.
Yeah.
And so he continues to provide for us life. Okay. So Jesus Christ is what the tree of life ultimately pointed to for us,
right,
who are now under, not Adam, we are under Jesus Christ. And so, yeah, they did, to answer that question and to do a little bit more is that they did eat of the tree of life, but their sin now barred them from communion with God, including their access to the tree of life. Eventual death came upon them. But those that are in Jesus Christ, they have access to Jesus Christ, who is ultimately the tree of life forever in all eternity.
So, is this kind of like, okay, is this kind of like the water versus the living water type of situation where, so I think the question also is asking, if they ate from the tree of life, why didn't they live forever? Because
No, but you need to continually eat of the
right, so
tree.
that's the
my point.
question.
Yeah,
right. So they would have to continually eat of it, and then this is kind of the question that the Samaritan woman had, right, to Christ about water and living water and how you don't have to ever drink from it ever again.
Yeah, give me this living water so I don't have to thirst again. Yep.
Right. Okay, now, so where is this tree now?
Yeah. I think that's the question Sam really wanted to get
yes,
to.
because it's
Where is
real.
this physical tree of
Yeah,
life?
where is it? Because it was
Yeah.
so distinct that a cherubim was guarding it. So then where is it?
Yeah. I believe we found it in the ruins in Iraq once, and then someone ate it, and they became one of the Knights of the Templar. And then it was replaced by the Holy Grail. And eventually Indiana Jones found it. But Indiana Jones had to let it go for the sake of, not dying, which is ironic, right? He almost fell into that chasm. Yeah. And so I think that's what it is.
Just for clarification, this is not a follow-up question submitted by the listener. This is Sam's personal question.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, because this is real. This is a real tree with photosynthesis. So I want to know where it is. Like, is it in the forest somewhere?
Like, is there a garden out there?
No, not the
where
garden.
you go near it?
Yeah.
There's an angel with a flaming sword.
What Sam really wants to know is, I get it that we still have the Tigris and the Euphrates. Where are these other
The
rivers like the
Pishon.
Pishon? Right.
Where did the Pishon
The
go?
Gihon.
The
Yeah.
Gihon.
Where did those rivers go?
Yeah.
And where's this tree of life? It was an actual physical, of physical substance. And I'm telling you, it's in Indiana Jones. You have to look for it. I think our U.S. government is holding it in Area 51 along with the aliens. But yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, it points to the true tree of life, which is Jesus Christ. And so the tree of life that this Garden of Eden was essentially pointing to is what we have in Christ forever and for all eternity. He is our tree of life. He is our fountain of life. He is our bread of life. He is all those things. And because of him, we will never die. We will never thirst. We will never go hungry. Because, again, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes forth or proceeds from the mouth of God. And that's why we get Jesus Christ. He is the Word. He is the Logos. He is all those things. And as we continue to dive into the Word of God and explore these things that the Bible is showing us, this mysterion that is being revealed, I think there is no one that isn't in awe of how amazing the plan of God was. Even angels long to look into these things, where it says in the letter from Peter. And so we also want to appreciate that. I get, just out of curiosity, I know Sam asked that, but to be honest, we should be really thankful that we do actually have a tree of life that we can commune with for all eternity, and we will never die.
I would like to think that the tree died because obviously death came and then the cherubim was relieved of his duty. Speaking of duty.
Imagine Indiana Jones. They find it.
This Indiana guy, I don't.
Yeah, you guys are too young for the movie, but if you're an older listener, you definitely know who Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, especially that movie with Sean Connery, is. It was seminal in the Indiana Jones trilogy at the time. And then they came up with all this other junk afterwards. I would like to think that The Last Crusade was truly his last one, even though Harrison Ford comes out in the later ones.
Thank you, Pastor Gene. Time for current events. On June 29th, which is last Thursday, the Supreme Court reversed affirmative action, reverse card, reverse Uno. And people are very, very opinionated about this decision. Your thoughts, Pastor Eugene? What are your thoughts
Man,
on...
affirmative action needs to be another podcast, TBH.
You think so?
Yeah.
We could
I've
do
been
that.
thinking about that, yeah. But there are so many people that are upset that this is going to take black people back. Back where? Slavery? I mean, let's be real here. What are you talking about? I have people will wake up and not just fall hook, line, and sinker on this crazy leftist narrative. It doesn't make any sense at all. Black people need help. I just don't understand that. Why do they need help again?
Pretty offensive.
Because of slavery and the reparations we
Yeah.
need to give. But how come of the students that got admitted in Harvard that are black, their descendants weren't slaves? Like 50% are immigrants.
Mm.
So if you're from Nigeria, you should still get this affirmative action. I just
Right.
like it doesn't make any it's not cohesive. Like you and I don't get it. Like, and then who needs to give up? Like when we talk about the reparations in San Francisco, like 40% or something like that, upwards of 40%, 30% at least, was are Asians
Yeah.
that have to pay these taxes to give reparations.
Yeah.
It's
But-
like, what do they have to do with black people being slaves in America? And again, I have to say again, it's not all of the United States. It was the South that held slaves. And so there are people that live freely in the North that were black. And so what about that?
Yeah.
Do they get reparations too? Like, this doesn't make any sense. You can't go by previous sins trying to repair them. When you have multiple generations that separate you from the actual act. And so I get it that people want to do a fix, but the solution cannot, and again, we can maybe do a longer one. The solution cannot be, quote, do something, unquote. That cannot be the solution because do something can actually do a lot of harm. You have to do the right thing, not something. And so I know that I'll be at odds with a lot of people, especially that are posting on social media now. But do something is not a solution. In fact, do something is how we got here into this mess anyway.
So that was a little teaser, an appetizer, if you will. We can talk about affirmative action. No longer next week.
Finally, Asian students can get into Harvard.
Yeah, all this time I could have gone there.
I heard a crazy statistic that a black student in the 40th percentile
Uh-huh.
was more likely to get accepted into Harvard than an Asian student that was in the 100th percentile.
Wow.
But you want to qualify that, right? You just want to say it. So this is Harvard's affirmative action as what they have said. Yeah, they actually said this. This is Harvard's admission data, and they're talking about racial disparities. So an African-American student in the 40th percentile of their academic index is more likely to get in than an Asian student in the 100th percentile.
That's wild.
Yeah. So if you are an Asian, but you're in the top 1%, like of the smartest, and there's a black person who is on the bottom 40th percent, you're still more likely to get in as a black person to Harvard. And so has affirmative action been helping? Man, we'll do a podcast on it. How about that?
Little podcast action coming at you next week. We thank you for listening to this episode.
No pizza? Come on, bro.
Oh,
Let's
we could do pizza.
We'll call it
Oh.
Pizzagate.
So there is another current event that I wanted to talk about since we'll be talking about affirmative action in a different podcast. Earlier last week, there was news of a new rule proposed by New York City's Department of Environmental Protection to reduce emissions given off by coal and wood burning pizza ovens by 75%. These would apply to coal and wood-fired ovens installed before 2016. And this is a statement by the DEP, not the DCP. The DCP will never say this, but this is the DEP. All New Yorkers deserve to breathe healthy air, and wood and coal-fired stoves are among the largest contributors of harmful pollutants in neighborhoods with poor air quality. So pizza is on the chopping block.
Yes.
What are your thoughts being a pizza lover?
Yeah, I'll give you a short answer. This is maybe one of the most inane and stupidest things that I've ever heard. And we are going to suffer. Yeah, we're going to suffer because of this insane leftist policy of getting rid of pizza ovens. Come on now. Yeah.
So
Don't, here's my final statement on it.
Mhm.
Don't touch pizza. Don't touch pizza.
Gone too
Don't
far.
touch pizza.
don't touch my pizza, man.
What's the matter, you? Don't touch the pizza. Huh?
So Mayor Adams, the mayor of New York City, there was actually he responded to a protester that was throwing pizza at the New York State something building.
Yeah, it's a New York government building.
A New York government building. There was a man throwing slices of pizza at the building, and Mayor Adams, in response to the pizza thrower, said he planned to call him, and this is quote, to tell him he needs to bring a vegan pie to me so we can sit down. And I want to hear his side of this. I love my vegan pizza with vegan cheese. And something about pizza, like, does anyone dislike pizza? Everyone likes pizza. So what are your thoughts on vegan pizza?
Should we talk about veganism?
Coming soon to a
Coming
podcast near
soon.
you.
We can talk about vegans.
Yeah.
You know what? We will do that. So hold your horses. We'll be talking about vegans and affirmative action in a coming podcast. We thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. Join us next week as we talk about affirmative action. It's affirmed.
No Roman Catholic.
You know, it's really taken a backseat. It's because these things are happening, and tune in next week to find out. We hope and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears. Fight the good fight, finish the race, keep the faith. Peace.